Hi, I'm Ben. I'm one of the hosts of the Alpha Youth Series, and I want to welcome you to Alpha Team Training Part 1. By the end of this session, you'll know what Alpha is, how an Alpha small group works, and how to be a host or helper for your Alpha. We've designed this session so that you won't only watch and listen, but also have a chance to talk things over as a group. Again, welcome to Alpha Team Training Part 1. First, let's answer the question, what is Alpha? Alpha is a series of interactive sessions that explore some of the basics of the Christian faith. It's about creating a space where people like you and me can be excited to bring our friends into a conversation about life and faith. Now, Alpha is for anyone, but it's specifically designed for people who wouldn't describe themselves as Christians or typically go to a church. Every Alpha session has 3 parts: a time for connecting with others, watching a short talk on a key aspect of the Christian faith, and then my favorite part, discussion in small groups. It typically runs over 9 to 11 weeks, and just past the halfway point, there's an extra session on a time away or a weekend. And the goal is to create a space week to week for people to explore the meaning of life and the Christian faith. We want to give people a chance to encounter Jesus for themselves. Now, over the years, Alpha has been hosted in church buildings, in homes, in schools, in prisons all over the world. And only recently have churches begun to host it online. And this has created an amazing opportunity for the ministry of the church, connecting with people we might not have been able to connect with before. People who would have never stepped foot in a church building are, some reason, willing to join Alpha online. And what we see again and again is that for so many people, it's life-changing as God impacts their lives. Now, these training sessions might seem like a lot of information, but don't worry. The main thing you need to know about Alpha is really simple. It's about friendship. It's about giving people a chance to talk about the things that matter most. You're going to do great if you just keep that in mind. Every session at Alpha includes 3 parts: connection, watching an Alpha talk, and discussion. First, connection. When you're hosting Alpha online, welcome people as you see them join, whether that's out loud or in the chat. And then some groups will play a game or have some icebreaker questions. And that just helps people relax a little bit and maybe even laugh together. As part of the team, do what you can in the first few minutes to help people feel welcomed and to connect to each other, and save the deeper discussions for later. The idea here is to be hospitable. It's about welcoming people and helping people feel seen and loved and welcomed as they are. The second part of every session at Alpha is watching an Alpha talk. Each episode of the Alpha Youth Series and the Alpha Film Series gives a clear Christian perspective on the session topic. And then the discussion is the time for guests to share what they think and feel about it. And that's the third part of every session at Alpha, small group discussion. If you're using the Alpha Youth Series, there are 3 discussion breaks during the episode, and then time for conversation afterwards. And if you're using the Alpha Film Series, you'll watch the entire 25-minute episode, and then you'll have small group discussion afterwards. Everyone should stay with the same small group each week so you can really get to know each other over time. And the groups will be about 8 to 12 people with 1 or 2 hosts and 1 or 2 helpers. And let me highlight these terms, hosts and helpers, because at Alpha, it's less about being a leader in the small group, and it's more about hosting a conversation and helping people feel welcomed and included. Hosts are the ones who facilitate the discussion, and helpers mostly stay silent during the discussion and pray silently and help draw others out when they notice that they might have something to share. For Alpha Online, at least 1 host or helper in each group will need to be a bit more comfortable with the technology. Another thing we're finding about running Alpha Online is that the hosts need to be actually a little bit more proactive in engaging people, in helping people feel welcomed, and then also helping people understand some of the small technical aspects like how to turn their video on and off, or how to mute or unmute themselves. Try to sit in a room that is well lit and that won't have a lot of background noise. And try to sit close to the camera. And remember to look behind you to make sure that you know what's going to be visible on camera. Now, it may sound odd, but I find it helpful to expect technical difficulties on every call I join. I do everything I can to avoid them, but it helps me when I expect that they might happen. When they do, I'm not as frustrated or as frazzled. And I'd say be prepared to spend a few minutes in every session, especially in the first few sessions, explaining how the technology works for everyone in your Alpha. And I'm not saying you have to be a technology expert. I know I don't think I want to become that, but we're just trying to make it easier for our guests to join the conversation and connect with each other online. Let's take a few minutes right now to pause this video and discuss some of these ideas in groups of about 6 to 10. And then when you're ready, just press play. And for this discussion, think about a time when you had an authentic and respectful conversation about a serious topic. And then ask yourselves, what do you think made it feel that way? Okay, I've asked my friend Jazzy to join me. She's one of the hosts of the Alpha Youth series and has run Alpha a bunch of times. Jazzy, I know you've run Alpha for adults and you've run it for youth, and I'd love for you to share some of the heart behind the small groups at Alpha, but then also specifically how to host the discussion week to week.
Yeah, I'd love to. We want people to feel love and respect in small groups, because when that happens, then they'll be more inclined to share their honest thoughts and build meaningful friendships. And so when it comes to facilitating great discussion on Alpha, there are 5 tips that I want to share.
Okay, let's hear them.
So the first tip is to ask open-ended questions. So for example, in the second session, instead of asking yes or no questions like, do you think Jesus is God? Instead, you could ask, well, who do you think Jesus is? Or what do you think it would have been like to be around Jesus? And remember, people process questions in different ways. Some people will be able to respond immediately with the first thought that comes to mind, whereas other people just need time to reflect and process the question.
One advantage of being online is that you can see when someone is about to unmute themselves or if their expression changes, and that gives you a clue that they might have something to share.
Yeah, and then another thing about being online is that everyone's names will be on the screen right from the start, so it makes things very personal. So that's the first tip. Ask open-ended questions, and the second tip is to be encouraging. So some people will be worried about saying something wrong or not having anything to say at all. So if they're brave enough to speak, encourage them, whatever they say, even if you don't agree, because you could just say, thank you for sharing. The job of hosts and helpers is not to teach a small group. There's no pressure for you to be a teacher. The videos do that for us. So as a host and helper, your job is just to facilitate discussion.
By listening well, being kind and encouraging, you're setting the stage for great conversation in the moment and in the future too. Okay, Jazzy, what's tip number 3?
Tip number 3 is be yourself. Being yourself is the best thing that you can do for your group. If you don't know the answer to a question, don't pretend like you know it. Just say, I don't know, but I'll try and find out for you. The reason why I'd say that is because people are drawn to authenticity. So put your focus on loving well, listening well, and praying for people instead of just trying to find all the right answers. And this leads to the 4th tip, which is don't answer every question. If someone asks a question, even if you know the answer, open it up to the whole group. Resist the temptation to reteach the content from the Alpha Talk and to add in more content that you're passionate about. And resist the temptation to correct or debate with people.
And that's a big one. So even if you think you know the answer to someone's question, it's better to say something like, oh, that's a good question. And then maybe, what are your thoughts on it right now? Or, oh, that's such a good question for everyone to think about. What does everyone think? And if they put you right on the spot and they really want an answer from you, you could just let them know that you'd be willing to follow up later. But for right now, your goal is to let everyone else discuss it.
Yeah, and further into your Alpha, it will become more natural to share a little bit more. But as much as possible, we want to create a space where people can self-discover. Okay, the last tip number 5, is embrace the silence. We found that people usually need around 6 seconds of thinking time before answering a question, especially when it comes to thinking about deep issues. Now, obviously, too much silence could become awkward, especially online. So if you ask a question and it doesn't draw out a response, maybe think of a way to rephrase it. Or it's helpful to repeat the question to give people more time to think about it. And encourage people to use a chat window whenever they want.
Now, the small group can be hindered by 2 things. One is the host or helpers speaking too much instead of encouraging the guests to speak.
Yeah, and then the second is allowing one guest to dominate the entire conversation. So if this happens in your group, try to talk to them privately after the discussion and ask them to help you make space for others to share. Now, if it continues to happen, for the sake of the whole group, you will need to interject in the moment and redirect the conversation. You can say something like, well, what I'm hearing is, and then paraphrase what's been said, and then redirect by saying something like, oh, thanks, Ben. Actually, let's hear some other people's thoughts about that.
Why don't we take another moment right now to talk as a group about everything we've heard so far. Prayer is the foundation for every Alpha. It's when we pray that God changes lives, miracles happen, and guests encounter Jesus. So let's start praying today. Let's pray for each other as a team, pray for the small group, and pray for the guests to respond to the invitations and to have life-changing experiences. When it comes to introducing prayer to guests at Alpha, we do it in the same attitude as hosting the discussion. We try to do it respectfully and intentionally for those who'd like to participate. And whether you're doing Alpha online or in person, I'd encourage you to wait until after the 5th session to start praying together. That's the session that talks about prayer specifically. I really hope all of this has been helpful for you as you think about what it means for you to host and help in a small group. If you forget all of the tips, but you keep your focus on showing respect and love for people, you'll do so well. Your Alpha might be starting soon, and so the last thing to consider is who you might want to invite and include in your Alpha. Who do you think might be interested in exploring the meaning of life and the Christian faith? Who do you think might be asking big questions and be looking for a place to have conversations with other people about them? When you think of who you could invite, say a prayer, talk to them, or send an invitation and see what happens. And if they seem open to it, you could send a message to give them all the information for how to join. And if they say no or don't respond or don't show up, then that's okay. Let them know if they're ever interested in the future to let you know, and then just keep praying for them. I just want to say, you have a real adventure ahead of you. Hosting a small group on Alpha is not without its challenges, but it's also one of the most rewarding things. And hosting a group online is really fun, and you get to do it from the comfort of your own home. Please know that our Alpha staff team is praying for you as you encounter strange questions, awkward silences, and stunning stories. God is with you. You're going to do great. Keep one ear to the guests and then one ear tuned to Jesus. And remember, it's not the words that you share, but the way you listen and you love people that will make all the difference. Thank you so much for watching Team Training Part 1. We'll see you in Session 2.